Today, I'm going to talk about hidden trauma, what it is, how to spot it, and why you might not even know you have it. Okay, so in my free ebook, Hidden Trauma, I was driven to write down some of the common symptoms and experiences of people who have had no overt trauma in their lives, not, very little. They've not gone through a childhood where they've been abused or they've been through a bombing or a war, but still they might have unexplained medical symptoms causing all sorts of issues in their adult lives. And so I wrote the book Hidden Trauma because I wanted people to understand that these things can often rear their heads later in life. And so you might not associate what you're experiencing in adulthood with why you're experiencing symptoms now. Okay, my name is Patricia Warby, PhD, and I am the author of Hidden Trauma. And I also work with clients with all manner of medically unexplained symptoms. And today I want to talk about a definition of big and little t traumas. Okay, so big T trauma is the kind of trauma that I was just mentioning there: war, abuse, being kidnapped, all sorts of, really extreme situations. But there's something else that's more what we term little t trauma. And these are the things that happen to most children through their childhood experiences. And for most, they're not traumatic, okay? We're not saying trauma is in every childhood. But for sensitive children, some of the little things can add up to a whole heap of problems in later life. And because it's later and you might not know, and neither will your medical practitioner, you won't often make the link between what you're experiencing and what happened to you. So everyday sources of trauma are things like your birth. How was your birth? If it was medical, in other words, if it was an emergency cesarean or you had to be brought in some way that was quite stressful through suction or whatever, that is recorded in the body as a trauma by your back brain, which communicates with your body. And these little experiences, although you have no conscious awareness of them, of course, because you were too young, will be recorded as a heightened stress response, which can come back to bite you later on in life. Have you got symptoms like, for instance, issues with your gut, issues with balance, dizziness, difficulty adjusting your blood pressure? Do you have skin issues, maybe, or you did when you were a child? Did you have an overly sensitive nervous system in the sense that you might have got travel sickness, or you might have had a bedwetting when you were young? These are very common signs that your nervous system is already highly stressed. Now, why that is the case is an individual experience. It might be from the birth, it might be how you grew up, it might be that your emotional needs weren't reliably met. Because trauma can often be not just the presence of something bad, but the absence of something good. Support, loving kindness, unconditional love. Maybe these were in short supply in your family of origin. And how is it that that can create a physical symptom later in life? I'll be going into that more next time. But basically, it's to do with the autonomic nervous system, which is everything really in terms of how your body works. It's the unconscious automatic system that runs your digestion and your breathing and your heart rate and all the things that you don't have to think about. Now, if there is stress in that system, unfortunately, it's going to dysregulate all the processes that normally go on unconsciously behind the scenes. And so gut issues and skin issues are often the first signs that something isn't quite right. If we look at asthma, for instance, a very common childhood illness, we treat asthma with stress hormones, with cortisone, because we recognize that there's a stress hormone imbalance in the system and the nervous system is overreacting and constricting the airways. But we very seldom ask what stresses is this child under that they're not handling. And therefore, they're expressing this through the body through certain conditions. And as you grow into adulthood, hmm, that's when things can really build. It's as if in childhood your body is able to just gently whisper in your ear, you know, there's something you need to look at here. There's something emotional that's not being soothed, that's not being dealt with. But as you get into adulthood, that whisper can become a scream, you know, and so these deeper symptoms start to appear: pain, fatigue, sometimes difficulties regulating your blood pressure, like POTS, which stands for postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. Bit of a mouthful, hence we call it POTS. Now, these are loosely related to chronic fatigue, long COVID. They're what I call fatigue related syndromes, and they have a lot of different expressions in the body. And I go into that in much more detail in my free ebook, Hidden Trauma, which you can download below in the links. I'm going to include that there. And you can have a look and see if maybe you have some of these symptoms that haven't been explained yet by the medical profession. And maybe you're looking in the wrong place for their origin. And I also give you some ideas for how to overcome these. So please, if the subject of hidden trauma intrigues you, which it did me because I came through a childhood without any overt trauma. And well, I lost my dad when I was young, but it felt like I had a fairly normal childhood up to that point. But actually, when I went into it, I found that there were all sorts of little experiences that my body wasn't able to metabolize properly. I should say my mind body, because the two are heavily linked. You know, they're not separate concepts, even though medicine treats them as such. So maybe, like me, you've had experiences in your past which you haven't fully dealt with, that your body is now screaming at you and saying, please look at this, please look at this, but it doesn't have words or language to communicate with you. It only has this fine tuning, if you like, of your autonomic nervous system to give you strange symptoms to kind of draw your attention to something. But often, because we don't know that the source is not to do with the problem in the body part that's expressing the issue, that it's more to do with the control system, the overall control system, it's often overlooked. And because the medical profession don't learn psychology, and they certainly don't learn about trauma and adverse childhood experiences, then we're missing a trick here. And that's something I want everyone to understand, that it's extremely common. It's so common, in fact, I would go as far as to say that if you've got some kind of unexplained chronic symptoms that the medical profession simply haven't been able to get to the root of, then it's very likely that the root lies in your childhood experience. And you owe it to yourself to investigate that. And if you find that difficult, then engage the services of a practitioner, find out, get someone to help you, support you emotionally to get to the root of your issues. It's not as difficult as you imagine. Now, next week, I'll be going into a few of the common symptoms that I have observed in hundreds of clients. I'm always on the lookout for patterns. Where I see a pattern, then I'm going to question that and ask what lies beneath this pattern, because there must be a common factor. That, after all, is what a pattern is. It's a repeating thing, isn't it? So I'm going to go through in some detail, and I'll include the link below, some of the most common symptoms that may surprise you. And so if this strikes a chord in you, if you'd like to investigate more, please do subscribe to my channel. It helps my algorithm. Thank you so much. Welcome to my community. And please download my book, Hidden Trauma, The 7 Unknown Signs. Take care of yourselves. Speak to you next week. Bye-bye for now.